Salespeople always seem to struggle to make their prospects feel heard. Everyone in an interview is going to tell you that they're the best listener ever. That's what salespeople think they are. They think, yeah, this is all about listening and I'm such a good listener. But actually, what they tend to be doing is just waiting for their turn to speak. In this video, I'm going to break down a few different ways that you can make your prospects feel heard, and the results might just surprise you. Number one is not using repetitive language. Salespeople, customer service people have got this really unusual ability to use repetitive language. No matter what someone says, we've all been on the phone to a salesperson who everything that you say to them, they say, okay, great, okay, great, okay, great, makes sense, makes sense, makes sense, over and over and over again. And our minds are wired to detect patterns in sound. So if I got my guitar out and I played a riff to you, I played Sweet Child of Mine to you, at first you'll say, okay, I'll quite like that. But if I play that same riff to you over and over and over again, you'll detect its repetitive nature. You'll wonder, why do I keep doing that? And the same is true from the spoken word as well. Only the difference is, if I keep repeating the same thing over and over, okay, great, makes sense, what the other person starts to think is, this person is not really listening. I'm very aware of how repetitive they're being. Are they being present in the conversation? They're not really behaving as a human being does. So number one would be, don't use repetitive language, or what I call dog words. All salespeople seem to have one, obviously. Fair enough, makes sense, all of those things that people tend to just throw in as the same repetitive word whenever their prospects finish speaking. Instead, what I would do is encourage you to switch up the language, or if you can, use their words back to them. But more about that one later. The next thing that I think is really, really important is the ability to, one, acknowledge people's emotional state, and two, acknowledge things that perhaps aren't being said. And I've put these two together for a reason. So if I'm speaking to you and I'm your potential prospect, and when you tell me the price of what you're offering me, if I go like this, that might be tough. If I do that, you need to wonder, what am I really telling you in that response? Okay, so I'm not overtly telling you really anything, but what I'm doing is I'm hinting there's some subtext there. What could I potentially mean by that response? Now, what I could be doing is I could be telling you something very generic. I could be thinking like, we haven't got the budget for that, whatever that means. Or what I could be saying is, I've got a bit of an uncomfortable relationship with the person who is the budget holder, maybe the CFO or something like that. And actually I now need to go and have quite an uncomfortable conversation with them. All happening within that, that's going to be tough. All happening within that subtext. And while I'm not going to say that overtly, I'm not going to start assuming people's relationships within a business, what I might do instead is I might say, okay, I'm getting the feeling I've put you in a bit of a tough spot there. And then what they'll do is they'll either say, no, you haven't, I can probably work something out, or they'll agree with you and they'll feel heard and understood, and they'll say, yeah, actually, I've got to go and ask for a bit more money than we had planned for this, whatever it may be. But an amazing thing happens when you're able to acknowledge someone, stay able to pick up on things that perhaps aren't being said in the conversation. And it's a rule for life, this. So if you have a child or a partner and there is some presenting frustration happening, it's always good to be able to take a step back and acknowledge that first before you run into kind of solution mode. So it might be a case of you pick up your child from school, they look like they've had a bad day, and rather than running into like, well, what could you have done to make it better, just to say, okay, it feels like it's been really tough. Yeah, it has. The shoulders will go down. I feel understood. And we all have that inner 6-year-old within us who just wants to feel heard and understood. So try to make sure that you're picking up on people's emotional state, what's not being said. And if you can put in some version of making them feel understood in that realm first before you run into question or solution mode, you'll find that the conversations flow much more naturally and people don't tend to feel like they're in a particularly salesy conversation. So that's number 2, trying to acknowledge someone's emotional state, trying to bring up things that aren't being said. And my final tip is the ability to paraphrase or summarize what people are saying. So this is another one that's really, really useful. People tend to value words they've said much more than words they hear. And often the best salespeople have a way of getting you to sell to yourself. So paraphrasing is basically just the ability to repeat back the words that you're hearing. And there's lots of different ways of doing this, but ideally what you want to be doing as the salesperson is taking notes of the things that apply to what you're doing. So if someone says, we've tried this before, it didn't really work as well as we thought it would, and because of that we're probably reluctant to try something again. Just within that, there's quite a few different lanes that have opened up. Often what a lot of salespeople tend to do when they hear that is just run straight into solution. We're different, we're this, we're that, and it becomes very sell. Instead, if they took a moment to say, okay, so it sounds like you're used to doing this dance before, and you've done it once before, a few times before. No, we did it once before. Okay, and when you did it that one time, what happened then? What was it that you didn't like about it? Well, they overpromised, they underdelivered. Okay, and because of that overpromising and underdelivering, is there a sense that actually all companies would work the same way, even if they could offer you the same thing? You know, and you can quickly see how I'm using the prospect's words back to them. I'm summarizing, paraphrasing, and using that as a way of continuing to ask questions and keep the momentum of the conversation going. So I think this is something that most salespeople tend to know, the questions, the pattern interrupts, the openers, whatever it may be. But that ability to treat people like they're wearing a big sign that says, make me feel heard. If you go into all your calls with that, and you're adding in acknowledging someone's emotions, picking up on things that aren't being said, not using repetitive language, and paraphrasing and saying the person's words back to them that you're speaking to, they're not only great rules for sales, but they'll also make you do much better in conversation in life as well. So hope that's been helpful. If it has, let me know. If it hasn't, my name's Jack Frimston. Thank you.